All right, so this video is going to cover a little bit of the new alt tech innovations that have come about, or I should say the growth. It's largely stayed the same, but it is major news, and I think that given the 3 or 4 years that I've been on BitChute and on other alt tech platforms, I think it's a great sign that people who are not political conservatives like Glenn Greenwald are starting to see the value of joining alt tech platforms, even if they're not ideologically on the left. So on that note, I do want to encourage you to subscribe to me on BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey for the video hosting, and also to follow me on Gab and Minds. And we're going to discuss in this video a little bit about Rumble and Gab. So if you haven't followed Glenn Greenwald, he has decided to join Rumble and encourage a group of other left-wing creators to join Rumble. And one of the things that I think is going to be a major sea change due to this is that you already have a massive audience of people who have been alienated on YouTube who are on the political left. And many of them have noticed that despite their having many opinions that jibe with the ruling Democratic Party that are on their platform, the party doesn't really fulfill that platform. Instead, they go along with basically the big tyranny agenda that many of them saw growing up under George Bush. So that's something that I think is going to create an explosion of activity on Rumble and probably on other alt tech platforms. So Glenn Greenwald actually wrote this as well. He said, so this was 3 hours ago, strengthening Substack journalism with video at Rumble, the free speech anti-YouTube platform. So he's already brought with him Tulsi Gabbard, who also I think brings a lot of people. He brings with him Bridget Fedesi, who is a comedian, and Zaid Jilani, who I'm not very familiar with, and Siraj Hashmi, who I did see a video of his that's, I think it's called like the Habibi podcast or something. And the truth is that I think that this could lead to a number of other Jimmy Dore creators, Jimmy Dore-like creators, people who have left the TYT network, and they will probably end up migrating also to Rumble. But the real fair question is, why hasn't this happened sooner? And I think that Greenwald, specifically because he's more of a writer than a video creator, but he's starting to get into video, it took him a long time because many of these people, they don't process the fact that, yes, you have these tools like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter in order to, to distribute your ideas and beliefs and in his case, investigative journalism to the world. But the truth is that they hold all the reins, right or wrong. All the cards are in their hands, and you're basically left there to wait for them to ban you. So it's very bizarre that until now, him and a lot of these other people haven't made the move. Styx Hexenhammer has for years encouraged all creators on all sides of the spectrum to abandon big tech and go over to YouTube go over to YouTube alternatives like Odyssey and BitChute and now Rumble. I can tell you from experience that it's not exactly easy to grow on them, but you at least have a very dependable audience. People who watch those platforms regularly, they tend to be very loyal. And there's people who have followed my BitChute videos specifically who have continued to come back for years and years. That doesn't mean that people who follow you on YouTube as a creator, that they're not interested as well, but it's starting to become basically, it's not starting to become, it's been for a long time a platform that discourages creators and discourages their fans from using it as sort of a meeting place. It's almost an obstruction if you think about it. So I will try to include links to some of these articles here. And just so we're clear, I personally, I have a lot of political disagreements with Glenn Greenwald, but he's doing the right thing. And when somebody does the right thing, when somebody says something that you know is right, whether you see them overall as being a positive influence in the world or not, it's worth it to give words of encouragement. So I actually wrote a comment on his first video that, welcome here, and we want to continue to fight against the type of behavior that forced people to leave YouTube for Rumble. And Rumble can actually become what YouTube was supposed to be, supplanting the liberal media. So this has created a lot of reaction. In fact, you have from The Hill, YouTube rival Rumble strikes deal with Tulsi Gabbard and Glenn Greenwald. So, and they also added a couple other people, the satirist Matt Orfalea. Matt Orfalea is a video creator who came to fame because he started to make very humorous videos in support of Bernie's 2020 presidential campaign. And he actually, not only was he censored on YouTube, before that, his past had been used against him in order to disqualify him from working for the Bernie campaign, because Bernie Sanders had hired him. He'd at least brought him on initially in order to be a video creator for the Bernie campaign. And rapidly, the cancel brigade came after Matt Orfalea. I don't even remember what the context was, for some sort of sarcastic tweet that he'd made before. And he was fired, basically fired for something. And there's journalists like Joy Reid who have survived for years and years. Their careers haven't been affected at all for actual blog posts that they've made that are bigoted in the minds of the left. Things about homosexuality and things about their opinions on, in her case, it was homophobia, I think, but she's also said many things that are blatantly racist. So those are things that you see happening consistently. And so those people are going to be migrating to Rumble, or they already have. And I actually watched Matt Orfalea's video. But you also have some drama going on, because Gab is firing at Rumble and calling it not a true free speech platform, because it does have basically rules that do not allow anti-Semitic content on it. So Andrew Torba, who's the founder of Gab, who does have many opinions and statements that you could say at least are provocative in that way. If you're talking about anti-Semitism, he tries to, I think, thread the needle there and try to do it like a little bit like a wise guy sometimes. But it's hard to call him authoritatively an anti-Semite, because he always pulls back at a certain point. So why would you? So he's basically baiting the media into going after him many, many times. And meanwhile, he does have people on his platform who have more explicit views about Jews and Zionism. But he also has a lot. I use Gab. There's a lot of Zionist creators and users who are pro-Israel or Zionist or whatever. I personally don't identify as a Zionist, but I agree with a lot of their premises, mainly that there's a right of a Jewish state to exist, which they would consider to be Zionistic. And there are many people like that who are on Gab. So it's not as if Andrew Torba is imposing his personal viewpoint on Judaism and Zionism on this platform. But he does poke fun at Dan Bongino and the people who run both Parler in the past and Rumble for their terms of service here. And Dan Bongino got into it with him. And I think it's very auspicious that at this point, I get it. I understand what Torba's going for. He's saying that repugnant speech, and he doesn't think of it as repugnant, but speech that's distasteful or is in some way maybe hateful or steps on a third rail or provocative or challenges social convention, that's what needs to be preserved on the free speech platform, not the stuff that people all agree on and is being canceled today by the left. In order for it truly to be free speech, you have to include a lot of stuff that is, very extreme, for lack of a better term. Things that maybe are on the fringe of the general political spectrum. And that's why I think Torba does have a point, but I think it's auspicious. And I think Dan Bongino, I listen to his podcast usually every day of the week when he has one. I think he has a point that Torba's criticism is coming exactly at the moment when Rumble is having sort of a breakout moment. They're attracting people who are on the political left. They're attracting people who are very, they've had to be sort of coaxed into it. And at this exact moment, you're having Andrew Torba come in and say, no, you're not a real free speech platform. Well, the truth is that, as hard of it as it is for me to say, yes, Parler or Rumble in this case, they can stake out terms of speech that they don't consider to be fit for their platform. As long as they enforce it consistently, I do think that the private platform principle should apply. The problem is that many platforms have these rules and they apply it very, very haphazardly. And they have very obvious preferences as to who can and can't say something. So, for example, you have had people banned on YouTube for saying things regarding vaccination, saying things regarding, the COVID-19 statistics, saying things about the origin of the virus, that they've been banned from the platform. And then you've had people who have come out who are in the establishment, people who are in the government, people who work for the federal government or their elected officials who are part of the administration, and they've admitted, yes, for example, that there is plausibility to the Wuhan origin of the virus. So the consistency is in the enforcement. It isn't necessarily in the rules. And for Gab, for example, there's no problem for Andrew Torba. He has a really hard policy on explicit content, explicit sexual content, whether it's porn, whether it's other types of obscenity. So he had a lot of people criticizing him at the time, saying, well, are you really for free speech? Because the Constitution actually, or not the Constitution, but Supreme Court case law has sustained that, yes, pornography is free speech. Although there have been certain cases that go against that. So Torba has made it clear that he is a Christian. He is not going to have any sort of pornographic material on his website, on his social media platform. And he's not going to, it doesn't have to be explicit pornography. It can even be very highly suggestive pornography. And many people were criticizing him. I remember that there was Jeremy Hamley, and they were saying, well, you're not really free speech then. Well, Andrew Torba's position is that obscenity is not free speech, and he goes towards many traditionalist interpretations of the Constitution. So in my opinion, Andrew Torba's opinion on how he can restrict obscenity on Gab is absolutely fine. It's his platform. He owns it. He can set the terms of service. But therefore, I don't think he's right in going after Rumble and saying, well, you should let all these people who are out and out anti-Semites, people like Christopher Bolin or quote unquote Dr. David Duke or Brother Nathaniel, he should, like, if Bongino and the other people who run Rumble say, well, we don't consider that to be acceptable for our platform, even though I think that that's actually something that should be part of the free speech debate, regardless of the fact that I'm Jewish, regardless of the fact that a lot of these opinions also lead to crimes in some cases, like what happened at Pittsburgh. I do believe it's free speech. I believe that it was wrong to censor, Gab as a result of the Pittsburgh massacre. It was wrong also to paint Gab into as some sort of extremist platform as a result of what happened in Christchurch, right? They're not responsible for the actions of their users because they don't control what they're doing. They're basically giving those people an outlet for free expression. And in many cases, those people, if you were to ban their freedom of expression, there's no way to actually detect them in time. If the law enforcement was actually competent and would be able to follow up on these tips rather than be passive and wait for them to happen, a lot of these crimes would be prevented. And in fact, there were some warning signs with both the guy from Pittsburgh and the guy from Christchurch. In any case, so it's a big mess. You have a response to Dan Bongino from Andrew Torba, and I don't have time to go through both Dan Bongino's accusation and Andrew Torba's rebuttal. But Andrew Torba is saying Dan collects a paycheck from Paul Ryan's Fox News. He's calling him out for the fact that Dan Bongino's program last week, his TV program, Unfiltered, did have an edit on its YouTube video of an interview with Donald Trump. But the truth is that he's calling him out without justification here, because Dan Bongino responded to that by demanding that Fox News reinstate the fully unedited interview of that, and they ended up doing it because Dan Bongino did respond. So instead of doing what I guess would be the Christian thing, I'm not Christian, but Andrew Torba is, what he would, forgiving someone for trying to make good on something that was wrong, even though Dan Bongino was not the person who edited it. It was the production staff at Fox News. Instead of that, Andrew Torba continues to rub it in his face. And he's talking about that it's not really a free speech platform at Rumble, and that he does support competition, unlike Dan Bongino. Let me be clear here. Andrew Torba has said bad things about Minds.com. He said negative things about other free speech platforms. He's only saying, I'm fine with BitChute and Odyssey. But the truth is that Andrew Torba is also somebody who has blind spots as far as his own free speech policy. And that's fine. The fact is that I don't think that you can create a fully free speech platform that would be acceptable to everyone, because you would have people who want to do illegal things, which is really a problem. You have people who would do things that are blatantly unethical, or who run scams and things like that, or all sorts of sock accounts from overseas. Those things do happen. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have any free speech. It doesn't mean that we should have blanket enforcement of opinion consensus. So that's about it as far as that's concerned. Another last story. Snopes is apologizing for their co-founder plagiarizing articles. Okay. And I think it was something like around 60 articles, and they were under pseudonyms such as Snopes Staff and Jeff Zeronandia. So I would say that this drives a nail into the coffin of the credibility of Snopes. There's been a lot of discussion of it for years that Snopes is basically just, they're propped up by big media companies in order to be a so-called independent fact checker. They get money from Facebook, I believe, to be one of their quote-unquote independent fact checkers. And the truth is that this guy, David Michelson, who for many years he was presenting himself as this cute little nerd who can go and contradict all of these urban legends. And it started really with urban legends like Bigfoot and, the whole thing where gangs do the light blinking thing, if you know what I'm talking about. And the truth is that he's always been full of it because he has this checkered past. He's gone and I believe he left his wife, who's also a co-founder, in order to shack up with some sort of hooker that he fell in love with or something. And yet the site, which is partially still managed by him, has remained credible. No, this is the final nail in the coffin, in my opinion. And I think that people, hopefully they're going to pay attention to this, and Facebook will have to, I think, address it at some point. But if not, really the question is, why are you still on these old platforms? If you are somebody with unconventional opinions that you can't get anything past the fact checkers because they're just yanking your posts off. That's about it for today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to my newsletter below. It doesn't come out very often, but it's worth reading. And also on BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. And I'll talk to you later.